And blessings. Happy Monday. What's going on, Life Warrior? It is so good to be here with you on this blessed Monday. I am just really honored to share this video with you and this time on the camera with you. You guys have made my Mondays a completely different day of my week, so thank you all. I know that I've already did a video on perfection. We had another video about that just a few weeks ago, wasn't that long ago, but so many of you commented or emailed me back or have seen me in person and have said something, and so I just felt really called to touch on the topic again today. I was thinking and picking my brain like what's going to be in today's Monday message, and I had some other things in mind, and then I came across this quote that I had written down, and it just jumped out at me like this is the one. So I know we already touched on perfection, but I know that there is somebody out there, maybe it's you, maybe it's a handful of you. I think that this is a topic that we all struggle with, but I know that there's somebody out there that needs to hear this message, so here it goes. I really love this quote. It is by an amazing woman. Her name is Veronica Cresto, and she says, perfect doesn't mean another hurdle to get over and doing it right. Perfect isn't about doing it right. It's about doing it fully without holding back. God, I just really loved this quote when I heard it. I was like, yes, that's it. Right? We think perfect means it's all gonna go the way that we think it should go. And you know as well as I do that just doesn't happen in life, right? So we can let that one go already. You know, that saying, we make plans and God laughs. I mean, it's 100% true, right? Whether you believe in God or a higher power or whatever, we make plans and they just don't go the way that we had hoped, or the way we anticipated, or the way that we designed them to. And I think that this quote by Veronica is really such a pivotal quote on this particular topic, because if we could just sort of step back from our concept of perfection and what doing it perfect looks like, step back from that and kind of erase it and write a new definition of what doing it perfect looks like and go with this definition, I think that so many of us will be way happier, so much more confident, and much more enthusiastic about showing up to difficult tasks or showing up to endeavors that we set out to do because our heart was calling to do it. So I'll read it again to you. I'm going to read it because I just want to make sure I get it right. Perfect doesn't mean another hurdle to get over and doing it right. Perfect isn't about doing it right. It's about doing it fully and without any holding back. I can think of so many moments in my life where, I showed up to a project or a conversation or a class or a workshop or a retreat, a teacher training, all these things that I do and I host and I put together. I can look back on so many of those moments, and every single one of them did not go as I planned. Every single one of them. And sometimes, the not going with the plan felt like a disaster, and sometimes it not happening according to my plan was like an auspicious blessing. But I can tell you, looking back on each of those moments, that they all happened exactly as they should have. And what was perfect about them was that I was willing to show up fully, wholly, and authentically as myself. Every single one of those endeavors offered me a lesson of growth, an opportunity to become more aware and more connected to who I am and my purpose and where I want to go. It's not about showing up to our endeavors and doing them perfectly. It's simply about showing up to our endeavors. I can't stress this enough, and this message is coming through so loud and clear in my own personal life, right? Like, we just need to let go of this idea of I gotta do this thing and I gotta do it perfectly. If you are waiting to do things in your life because you're waiting for it to be perfect, you are going to be waiting until you get to your grave, and then the waiting will be over, and so will your life. Right? Let's just take a moment to let that sink in. Don't wait for perfect. Just show up as you are, without holding back, authentically, fully as yourself. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to go awesome, And it also doesn't guarantee that like it's gonna go horrible. It's just gonna go the way that it should go for your learning curve in life. So I think that so many of us are stuck in our lives, and so many of us are holding back in our lives because we're waiting for perfect. We're waiting to feel perfect. We're waiting for the perfect scenario. We're waiting for all the perfect things to line up so that we're like, yes, this thing is ready to rock and roll. And if we can just shift our perception of what perfect means, and that's why I really love this quote by Veronica, because it's not about having all the skill or having everything lined up perfectly or having all the resources or to be totally ready or the moment to be just right. It's about like being perfect or doing things perfectly is really about just showing up 100% as you are, or as I often say in yoga class, being all in. Just be all in. Showing up wholeheartedly, right? And Brene Brown, her research says that wholehearted living requires courage, compassion, and connection. And so if we let go of like perfect and replace it with wholeheartedness, can I show up wholeheartedly to this thing? Will this endeavor make me feel more wholehearted? How can I live my life in a wholehearted fashion? Can I just be all in? Can I show up with courage? Can I show up with compassion? Can I show up with connection? Right? That is where we begin to perfect our lives. And again, in the last previous video, I talked about perfection, letting go of the need to be perfect, but that we can still embrace perfecting ourselves, perfecting our life, perfecting our skill. But those things happen in motion. And so to tie it in with Veronica's quote, right, really just showing up 100%, showing up fully and wholeheartedly, being all into that thing, whether it just blows up in your face or it's a complete failure or it's a total success and it was like beyond your wildest dreams. As long as you showed up wholeheartedly, as long as you were all in, you showed up fully and authentically to that thing, right, then the perfect outcome is going to happen, or what we call perfectly imperfect, right? This perfectly imperfect sort of experience. It didn't go perfect, but that was the perfect thing that you needed in that moment in your life, in that endeavor, in that project, or in that relationship, or in that process. It was perfectly imperfect, which means it didn't go perfectly, but it was exactly what you needed for your growth, for your realization, for your unfoldment. So let's just give ourselves permission to re-embrace this idea of perfect and redefine the concept of perfect for ourselves in our lives. I really enjoy this particular definition of perfect because it gave me permission to just show up and to know that like just showing up is perfect. And whatever needs to happen, whatever needs to unfold, whatever experience I need to have, it's gonna happen. It's totally gonna happen. And that's, I think, also another hard point or another hard process is we have this utopian ideas of how it's supposed to happen, when it's going to happen, and we have to let go of those things too. It happens when you're ready for it to happen. It happens because you needed it to happen. It happens because there was a lesson there. It happens sometimes because we need to go through those experiences in life so that we can become the person we need to be in order to serve the greater good. We call it turning your mess into your message. So, I know that there are some of us out there who have horrible things that have happened to us, tremendously horrible things that nobody deserved to ever have happen. And here I am saying it's going to happen the way it's going to happen, and that's what you needed. And so how can you take your mess, or how can you take the mess that happened in your life and turn it into your message, right? This is where we can start to like apply that concept of perfectly imperfect. It was, like my upbringing wasn't perfect. There was a lot of undesirable things that happened in my life as a childhood. And there wasn't any one particular huge, gigantic moment that was the traumatic moment. It was the everyday stuff that happened or didn't happen. But my upbringing wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly what I needed. It was perfectly imperfect for me because it molded and shaped who I am today. It's molded and shaped who I am able to show up as today for all of you out there in the world. If I didn't have those messes, if I didn't have those problems, if I didn't have those obstacles that I had to overcome, I wouldn't be here sharing all these things with you. And so I can look back and be grateful for all that stuff that happened in my life. And so how can you choose to show up? Like what is happening in your life? Where is this sort of attachment to perfection in your life that you can reacquaint or reassess the way that you approach that thing, right? How, like, if you have, I don't know, if you have a job that you're applying for, or you have a schooling that you're applying for, or you have this project that you want to put out there, or this business that you want to open, or this career that you want to take on, but you're kind of holding back because you don't feel perfect. You don't feel like a pro, right? Nobody starts out as a pro. We all start out as novices, and we have to grow from there. So how can you give yourself permission to start, right? By kind of unhooking from your relationship with perfection. Really begin to embody this quote in this message today. Perfect isn't about doing it right. It's not about showing up to that next hurdle or that next difficulty or that next challenge and like totally nailing it and doing it 100% right. Perfect is not about that. Perfect is about showing up to the thing and just being all in, showing up fully and wholeheartedly and being all in. So where in your life can you decide, I'm just going to be all in, even if it's a mess, even if I'm a hot mess, I'm all in? Where can you show up in your life and be willing to just be all in? It may be a difficult conversation that you have to have. It may be a project that you want to pursue, a goal that you're trying to achieve, a business that you're trying to create, or taking your business to the next level. You know, like a lot of our stuckness, I think, is attached to this idea of being perfect. Right? And really, you know, if we step it back even further, it has a lot to do with not being enough. And you are enough. You are enough. You have a calling, you have a purpose, you have a grand design, and don't let this idea of perfection, or rather being perfect, get in the way of you pursuing that endeavor. You know, sometimes in life, the calling that we are feeling isn't necessarily about the end goal. It is often just about taking that journey and what happens in the journey, right? So many of us subscribe to this belief that, like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Well, then why are we all bitching about our journey? And we're so frustrated because we're not at our destination yet. Most often I have found that it's not about the destination. And you may set out to do something and you don't end up at that original destination that you had in mind, but you gained so much because you were simply on the journey. And so how can you be all into your journey? How can you let go of perfection and let go of your utopian idea of what is perfect and just show up to the journey and be all in? And whatever happens, trust that you'll get through it. Trust that it's happening the way that it should, because there are lessons in there for you, lessons that allow you to grow and unfold into your greatest self. How can you unhook from this idea of, I'm going to wait till it's perfect? How can you let go of this idea of, well, that was a failure because it wasn't perfect? How do you let go? You start to embody this definition of perfect by Veronica Cresto. You say it's perfect isn't about, you know, the end goal, and it's not about, did I do it absolutely 100% amazing? You know, it's about, did I show up 100%? Did I show up as myself 100%? Did I do the best I could with what I had? It may have been a mess, but that's what I had at that moment, and I showed up, I was all in. Even if I was a hot mess, I was all in. That's perfect. Then it was perfect. It was perfectly what you needed. It was perfectly imperfect. or if it was perfectly full of imperfections because that's what you needed. And how can we embrace that? How can we begin to embrace that, like, we don't have to be perfect? But more importantly, how can we embrace that things don't go perfectly because that's what we needed? That's what was meant to happen. Because somewhere in there, we needed that journey. We needed that experience. We needed that chapter of our life, or we needed that experience to really mold and shape who we are. I mean, I could share a ton of stories with you about how things didn't go perfect, but I learned so much in the process. And so when I look back, I'm like, it went perfectly the way it was supposed to, because I needed to learn that lesson. There's lots of short stories I could share with you, but I won't, because this will be like a 2-hour video. So again, how can we step into our lives in a way where we are okay with things not being perfect? We can do that by giving ourselves permission to be all in and just show up to the endeavor all in, wholeheartedly, and trust that, like, as long as we show up all in and we show up wholeheartedly, it's gonna go exactly the way it needs to go. And again, that doesn't guarantee success, but it does guarantee growth. And I'm hoping that in your life, growth is more important than success, because if you're growing, you will inevitably achieve success. You can achieve success without growth, but that success will be so short-lived. We have to grow. We have to grow and evolve. Otherwise, we stay stuck in these cycles, and whatever we're experiencing in that moment is going to be very short-lived. It won't grow because you're not growing. So let growth be your motivator, and know that right behind growth is success. Right behind growth is success. So it's okay to want to be successful. You should want to be successful, but more importantly than success, more of a motivator than success should be your growth. And growth means that we got to show up and be all in. Growth means that we're going to fail. Growth means that we're going to trip up and we're going to stumble and we're going to fall. That's how we grow, right? That's how we grow, by making mistakes. Right? We make mistakes, we learn, and then we grow. But we sometimes we make mistakes and we get stuck. We don't grow because we get stuck on, I'm not perfect. That thing didn't happen perfectly. It should have gone this way to be perfect. And we're like squandering and sitting on top of our opportunities for growth, which are inevitably going to lead us to our success, or lead us to our success. And so how can you look back at your life in those moments where you feel like that just blew up in my face, and go, oh, it was perfect. Actually, that's what I needed to happen. I needed that thing to happen. So again, how can we just start to reapproach our lives in a way where we embrace this idea of perfect differently? Perfect meaning I was 100% in. I was all there. I showed up wholeheartedly. I gave it my all, and it was what it was, and it was exactly as it should be. How can we start to do that? What can you do in your life to start to show up this way, right? And maybe it is as simple as reciting this quote to yourself every day, having it up on your mirror in the bathroom where you brush your teeth every day, and you read it to yourself every day. For me, that's what I do. That's how I start to embody these things. Is like, I need this in my face all the time. I need a reminder, and I need to read it out loud and say it out loud and contemplate it regularly until it's something that I embody. And so maybe you write it out and you put it up. And I'm gonna read it to you one more time, okay? Perfect doesn't mean another hurdle to get over and do it right. Perfect isn't about doing it right. It's about doing it fully without any holding back. I just love that quote. I love it. And I know somebody out there needs to hear it. That's why it popped out at me as I was going through my notes, figuring out what I was going to do today. So, where in your life are you holding back? Where in your life are you holding back because you feel like you're not perfect enough? And how can you give yourself permission to let go of the chain that is holding you back? How can you What does it look like to give yourself permission to break free from those chains of perfection and say, I'm just going to show up and be all in, and I trust whatever happens is what needs to happen? How can you start doing that? You know, to me personally, I think it requires a lot of just being connected to yourself and giving yourself permission to live this way, which often means we have to let go of and unhook from the belief system that we have been given through our upbringing and all the definitions and ideas that have been thrown in our face and in our psyche about what perfect means. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that this message was helpful for you. I hope it made sense for you. And if it did and it served you, feel free to email me back or drop me a comment on the YouTube channel and let me know how this helped you and how this served you, because these videos are for you. And so when you guys give me feedback, I'm able to narrow in and dial in to kind of what it is that you'd like to talk about. I hope you have a great week. I hope that you allow yourself to show up wholeheartedly, be all in, don't hold back, just show up fully. Don't worry about it, being perfect. Know that it's all going to work out perfectly as it should. All right, life warriors, I hope that you show up to your week 100% and you keep your head up and your heart open wide and you love fully and openly as much as possible. Many blessings to you, and until I see you next Monday, namaste.